Fellas, what's good? Thank y'all for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you sharing the gift of your time to break bread with me tonight and share your thoughts and perspectives on a very, very important topic, at least important to me. And today we want to talk about George Floyd 5 years later. We right here in the heart of Minneapolis. Each of you brothers were here, from here, have been here. Y'all were here when that horrific, tragic murder of our brother George Floyd went down 5 years ago. It's been 5 years now. It's been 5 years. And so I just want to have a conversation tonight about, 5 years later, what's changed? Has anything changed? What have you done to affect change? What change do you still want to see? And that's the topic of the conversation tonight. So before we jump into the conversation, I just want to make sure everyone knows everyone and we know who's being represented tonight. So I'm going to start off with my brother. Well, y'all know who I am. True Pettigrew. I'm saying my connection to Minneapolis, former chief impact officer for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Lynx. I arrived here shortly after the murder of George Floyd in 2020. Was here for 4 years. Decided that my work here, on a full-time basis at least, was done at the end of the 2024 season. So I was here 4 years strong, man, and had the distinct pleasure of connecting with so many of you brothers around the table and others, man, to do the work, right? And it has forever transformed and changed my life, which is why I'm back here now for this 5-year day of remembrance, right? Which is what brought me back here now. And so that's me, husband, father, bridge builder in a nutshell. And my brother from another, man, my OG, my Minnesota OG, for real. JB, you already know. Just tell the folks who you are real quick.
Well, I gotta accept that. I used to be not wanting to be the OG, but now with the gray hair and going on pushing 60, I am, and I'm appreciative of that. Well, true, I'm James Burroughs. I'm a father of a wonderful 13-year-old named Teresa Ann Burroughs. Fatherhood is my main duty in my job. I work in equity and inclusion and diversity for Children's Minnesota. Been doing that since the time I met you. But this moment in time is double sword for me because I worked for the governor's office in 2016 when Philando Castile was murdered. And some of the same similarities between George Floyd's murder and Philando Castile played out in the same way. So I want to talk about what we've learned from both of those things and what's important as well. But I'm glad to be here, glad to do the work, and glad to meet some new people as well.
No, thanks. And you brought something up. What a lot of people might not know, and it didn't hit me until I got here, is that a number of those police-involved shootings happened here in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
The number of the ones that went global, right, happened right here. And it didn't, I knew it, but it didn't really hit me until I got here. It was like, oh, that was here. Oh, that was here. That was here. Yeah, so there were several of those. Yep. Dario.
Yeah, Dario, Otero, CEO and founder of YouthLens 360, which is a video production company. We train and mentor youth to get into the field of video production. And I also work with Mad Dads as a workforce development coordinator, so helping to build up opportunities for people who are coming from, from whether they were formerly incarcerated or they just, trying to find a job, trying to figure out what that next step is in life. So building that program. But dad, a father of 3, I got a bonus daughter that's 6, I got a 10-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. So this conversation really impacts me just because it hits close to home, right? It's one of those things that, I talk with my wife about daily because she works in the governor's children's cabinet now. And we have talks about what is our role when this stuff happens. And so just happy to be here to have this conversation. I think more of this has to happen, and I'm just ready to go, man. This is important to me.
Yeah, that 15-year-old son, he about to be out there on his own, independent of mom and dad. So I'm sure that's weighing heavy on your heart.
Every day.
Yeah.
Play sports, do that, do something.
You guys licensed?
Yeah, not yet. He thinks he does, and he already trying to talk his grandma out of her car.
Yeah, that's what.
They had to get you a new car.
But bro, that's when it get real. When they out there on their own. Yeah, man. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Chef, talk to the people.
Hello, I'm Chef Cherokee Christopher, entrepreneur, businessman, community worker, you know, activist, and yeah, just heavy in the community, mentoring young people that don't really know what they want to do, and then trying to build some restaurants and businesses. But yeah, I'm heavy in the community. I love feeding people and just networking and bridging the gap between community and people.
Appreciate that, man. And we'll talk more about that later. But when you say you love feeding the people, you fed the people when the people needed to be fed the most. So we appreciate you for that, brother. Yep. Jay.
Man, Jordan Bohr Nelson, executive pastor, Foundations Church, and president of Mad Dads Minneapolis. Man, just a blessing to be here. A husband, a father of 6 kids. So, man, they all from 2 years old to 13 years old. So we got a busy house, man, but we blessed. It's just a blessing to be here. I'm from Minneapolis, so I'm actually from the neighborhood that George Floyd was murdered in, and also the target where a lot of the first uprisings were going down at. So that was just a heavy time, you know, to actually see the neighborhood I grew up in the stores like I know, or in some of the store owners and even some of the new stores, to kind of be up in smoke and up in flames like that. But to see it to be happening because of something we have been crying for a long time. So y'all brought up Philando, but, you know, like Dominic Felder, you know, was my best friend growing up, was his brother. Before George Floyd, at that time, that was the largest settlement for a police killing at the time in Minneapolis. They gave his family $5 million for what they did to his brother. So like, and I saw what that did to him. Let me slow down for, you know, I ain't gonna take up everything, but we can get to it. But man, this is big for me. Growing up in this city, understanding the violence and the brutality that the Minneapolis Police Department had towards men, especially men of color. First time I was ever called a nigger was by the police.
Wow.
So we'll get into it, but yeah, man, this city got a long history.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Jordan. And, you know, you talk about seeing it, you know, up close and personal, live and direct. I mean, a lot of the world, most of the world saw it, you know, on a TV screen. And I don't think people realize, and as impactful and as tragic and as horrific as it was, even looking at it through the TV screen, it was even worse up close and personal. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. And then when the cameras were turned off, when the cameras went away, it didn't stop. That's the other thing, because when it stopped for the rest of the world, when the cameras stopped, it kept going here, right? For a minute.
Man.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? I was in LA in August of 2020. COVID locked down everything, and that's when I knew how big George Floyd was. I seen the murals on TV, but when we were in LA, from LA to Santa Monica, we probably seen over 10 murals for George Floyd, rest in peace. And that's when I knew, like, how much this actually affected.
No, it started a movement. It really did. It started a movement. Kasey, what's up, brother?
Yeah, true. First of all, just thank you for having me tonight. It's an honor. So my name is Kasey Robinson. I'm an artist from the community. But first and foremost, I'm a follower of Christ. I feel like I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for God in my life. So I just want to put that out there. But yeah, I'm just, you know, a kid from North Minneapolis that has continuously tried to use creativity as a tool to, this might be a common word tonight, but bridge the gap between like people and an idea. And so I've been holding and curating shows since like 2014, done some murals around the city, even for Mad Dash, shout out to Jordan. And yeah, just continuously looking for opportunities and ways that I can use the gifts that God gave me to break down ideas into like a digestible form for people in the community. And sometimes, like myself, I'm a visual learner. So somebody might put something on paper for me and it'll make way more sense than if I were to be told what that was, you know? So, yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. Also a business owner and a uncle. I'm not a father yet.
Yeah.
Gotta find the right one first. So yeah.
No rush, brother. No rush.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Kasey, I appreciate you, man, acknowledging your faith as the foundation of your identity, because you and I know each other. We talk quite a bit, and we share that, right? And we shared a conversation recently that I'll share publicly where I remember sharing with you, recognizing that the promises over my life, meaning the promises that God has made over my life, are far greater than the attacks that are on my life. And that is what really helped me get through the tough times during the 4 years that I was here, is remembering that, you know what? God's promises over my life are far greater than any attack that's on my life. And so I'm gonna stand on that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I appreciate you acknowledging that, you know. Yeah, that's big. Yep. What's up, man? The guy that might have saved my career right here.
Well, most definitely, I want to also echo what everyone else has said, and thank you for convening this table. You know, I don't see enough of these types of tables in which, you know, we're speaking power to our own reality, right, in a space that is digestible and observable by others, in which we're taking our own agency. And talking about our lives and our experiences. And I want to see more of this curated. I know, James, you put together, I was out of town, you know, when you put that phenomenal event together for the brothers to come and just share space. Yeah. Man, I mean, I love it. I want to see more of it. It powers me. My name is Elizer Darris. I'm an organizer, advocate. Right now, I run the Minnesota Freedom Fund. At the time that George Floyd was murdered, I was with the ACLU of Minnesota. I coordinated the Smart Justice campaign, in which we looked to disrupt some of the predatory energy that existed within systems, right? And so just the vocation that I had at the time literally demanded that you know, I occupied certain spaces and brought certain energy. But my spirit also demanded and commanded me to move in a certain way. I recall sitting in the living room and watching George Floyd take his last breath as he was calling out for mercy that he never received, as something inside of me broke at that point. I had just spoke with the chief maybe an hour earlier, who had assured me that it was a medical incident that occurred. And honestly, I did, you know, at a certain point, I was like, okay, that's probably what happened. Sometimes people put a little bit of extra juice on stuff. That just had been my experience. I was like, okay, I'm hearing it from, you know, the news media, so that must be what happened. And so when I saw that, it was something literally broke and a rage just poured out of me when I saw the truth of what really happened.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, man, and just really taking us back to that moment in time. Because, like I said, I'm here for the Day of Remembrance, and I think that's so important that we remember what happened. We remember the tragedy. We don't try and dismiss it or ignore it or sweep it under the rug, right? And I want to take a minute to reflect back on that moment in time for all of us. And you shared a little bit about how it affected you, the moment that it happened, right? And for the rest of you, because you were all here, ground zero. All of y'all were here. I came just shortly afterwards, you know, out of a need to help build some bridges, right? But JB, can you think back, and this is for everybody, I want to hear from y'all. What was that moment like for you when you, like, being here on the ground? What was that moment like 5 years ago?
The unfortunate piece for me was, as I said before, about Philando Castile, and I can't be remiss forget about Jamar Clark and others, is here we go again. So I thought about, man, another brother that has died tragically. And I also, too, had heard about the medical thing. I was like, okay, maybe it's not as bad. I hadn't seen the video yet. Maybe it's something we're overreacting to right away. Then I saw the video, and I was just stunned. not that it could happen, but that was captured for that long a period of time and no one intervened from the other cops around. Right. And obviously the people who were there couldn't intervene because you got cops with guns on there, you got to protect their own lives. But I was like, man, okay, we're back to Philando. We're back to Jamar Clark. And one of the first things I did was I called my CEO, Mark Gorelick, Dr. Gorelick, who some of you all know. Yeah, I know Mark. And Mark doesn't watch a lot of TV. I said, you got to watch the video. Mm-hmm. He said, oh, no, I heard it. I said, no, you got to watch it. You got to watch it from beginning to end because I want you to feel the impact that this has on seeing a man murdered on live TV and who looks like me, could be me, right, and somebody I probably have seen before or known before. So that trauma was double, tripled up there. The other piece of it for me was, and I'll be honest and candid, all of my friends, my white friends especially, don't ask me what you can do right now. Asking me, like, hey, James, I want to do something. Right. Well, my answer was just sit in it. Because for so long, I've had to, as a black man, sit in other black men being murdered and to see that and feel that pain. I want you to just sit there with it. Your angst, your uneasiness, those kind of things. Just sit there in it. Right. And if you sit there in it, you realize that it's a pain. You realize it's a loss. You realize it's a trauma. And then therefore, we can go forward and talk about more things, but don't move now. Don't jump now. Don't say what we should do. And don't panic now in fear of saying something out loud that you may regret later because you don't know all the facts of what's going on as well. So that's where I was back at that particular moment that it happened.
You wanted your counterparts to feel some of that, I guess, that vicarious trauma, although they still, I don't believe, at least even in my own experience, felt it to the depth and the degree that you and I would feel it, because we could easily transfer ourselves to being in that position in a real way. But that could have been you.
Yeah, we've always had the black man police incident. From growing up, we were called different things by the police. I grew up in Detroit, and we had the Big Four roll around and beat up on brothers just because, to prevent you from committing a possible crime that you didn't commit. Because. So my police interaction wasn't a positive one to begin with. So you're right, I could set myself right there trying to explain to get away from it.
Man, I remember that moment. I'll never forget it. I was in my office at the house, and I think that moment hit everybody differently. And for me, it hit me in two ways, like a faith-based moment. It was like a God moment. But then it hit me like disappointment and anger, because I ain't think nothing was gonna change. When I see, this is exactly what happened. I was in my office and I was reading, I'm studying my Bible, because Kasey, that's my foundation. I was preparing actually for a meeting later on that day with my bishop, because he wanted to discuss if we were going to get his blessing to open the church. So it's crazy, 12 noon that day is the day he gave us the blessing to open Foundations Church. And was like, I bless you guys, y'all, that day. The church opened that day. So the church didn't open, but we had a meeting for him to bless us so we could start the process. And I was getting prepared. And my wife knocks on the door. She says, babe, you're not going to believe this. They killed somebody else. And I'm like, what do you mean they killed somebody else? She like, man, look at this video. And I watched the video and I'm angry. But the first thing I said to my wife was, I said, this is the truth. I've only seen that video once. That was the one time my wife showed me. I said, I don't even want to watch it no more. And she was like, no, but I said, I don't want to see it because they ain't going to do nothing. Nothing's gonna happen, nothing's gonna change. I'm remembering now Dominic Felder, I'm remembering Jamar Clark, I'm remembering Philando Castillo. I'm remembering these different individuals. I'm remembering being 12 years old and some people robbed a pizza man, so the police seen us and he rolls up on us and we all run and he shoots at us and he tells us, hey, get down or the next one's going in your head. And it's a group of kids, so I'm remembering all my experiences now with the Minneapolis Police Department. And I'm like, I don't even want to see it because nothing's going to change. And it's just going to continuously be the same thing. And I told my wife, I said, they're going to pay his family some money and they're going to sweep it under the rug just like they do every time. So I will say this, though. The moment for me where I felt like there could be some triumph is when we went to 38th in Chicago. And it was 20, 30,000 people there. And I was like, oh, snap. We maybe can actually do something about this, for real this time, because this has never happened before, this level of organization. So that was maybe for me a few days later, like my moment of like, okay, this is a terrible situation. But like I always like to say, like God can turn tragedy into triumph. You know, like where in this moment, you know, can we use our passion and our zeal for this brother who, you know, was murdered by the police to create some sort of systemic change?
I love that. Thank you, man. I've heard y'all sharing y'all emotions of feelings of anger. I've heard frustration, disappointment, right? Kasey, you remember the feelings that you felt when that occurred?
Yeah, I was oblivious to the situation that day. I was super busy, and at the time, I was actually staying at my mom's house for a little bit. And my mom's a white woman, and I remember what was it that she was doing? She was in the garage doing something and like preparing like this giant white sheet to put in her yard that said something about like he didn't deserve to die or something like that. And she was like crying in the garage. And she was telling me about what happened. She's just like sitting there weeping. And I couldn't help but just catch her emotion. And she told me what had happened. And I didn't even watch the video, but I was just like, I started crying as well. Because I could just, I don't know, just the way I felt my mom, because she watched the video. So she was telling me about what had happened, basically. And so I remember just feeling that emotion vicariously almost, but also in a way that was super relatable at the same time, because a few years before that, I actually had an incident with the cops in Brooklyn Park where they pulled me over, like on Easter Day. I was leaving my sister's house, and this cop follows me all the way through the neighborhood and then pulls me over on Brooklyn Boulevard. And I don't know, it just seemed like really odd to me. And I was wondering, like, what did I do? Like, I quit selling weed like a long time ago. So I'm like, this can't be for that, you know? And sure enough, they pulled me over. Another squad car like comes in front of me. There's like 6 cops around me, all toting their guns.
Right.
And my heart just is pounding out of my chest at this point, because I'm literally like, what did I even do? And the guy that comes up to my door, like he has his gun like drawn, tucked by his car, and he's like has his shoulder to like my shoulder basically, like won't even like fully come next to my window. And he asked for my ID. It's in my backpack, and like that's when they like pulled their weapons on me, because I told him it's in my backpack. And so, which is in the passenger seat. Anyways, I give him my ID. He looks at it, immediately goes, "Oh, it's not the guy," throws the ID at my face, and then they just leave.
Wow. Man, what's concerning about that, as I listen to you tell that story, Kasey, I have several of those stories, not growing up in Baltimore, right? Living in LA. And I would imagine, and it's unfortunate, that each of us around this table probably has our own version of that story, which is sad, right? Man. Well, I tell you what, fellas, look, the food is here. I want y'all to break bread and let's eat. So if y'all don't mind, I'm gonna bless this up real quick and we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. Lord, thank you for this dinner. Thank you for this dialogue. We pray that this food nourishes and strengthens our bodies, and that you will continue to order our steps in all that we do. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
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 So I want to say something. You mentioned everybody has a story about that day, right?
Yeah.
So there's times in your life when you have these pivotal moments. Some are good, right? Child's born, graduation, prom, and then you have the bad ones, 9/11, things like that. I think George Floyd is one the whole world will always be like, I know where I was, I know what I was doing. I was in the bed flipping through my phone, and as I was flipping through my phone on Instagram or something like that, boom, I see a video. But at the time, I think it was Facebook. There was only 393 views. 393 views on the video. And so I'm like, wait a minute, this is fake. Because at the time, you remember when they would drop videos and act like it just happened, but it happened like 10 years before.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, this is fake. This is another. And I refreshed the page, and it was like 5,000 or 6,000 views. And I'm like, what just happened?
Just from one refresh.
I refreshed the page, it was 20,000 views. I refreshed the page, and I remember I did that for like an hour, and I said, this is real. This is happening now. Like,
Very real time.
And I just remember just the feeling of just being hopeless. And it was actually my dad's birthday. I remember my dad always says, he's
Wow.
like, man, I hate the fact that my birthday
May 20th.
is on that day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you know, that struck me in a way where it's like, I'm always gonna remember that day, unfortunately, for this moment.
Right.
And I felt helpless. That was the second feeling I felt of just
Helpless.
not knowing where is this happening? What am I doing about it? You know what I'm saying? Wait, where is everybody I love right now? You know what I'm
Right,
saying? It's
right.
a selfishness, right? Of like, this brother is literally dying on camera, but right away your human trait tells you where my people at.
Yeah.
I start calling my people. Where's everybody at? So
Yeah, everybody good? Is that, yeah.
Everybody good, man.
definitely
Man, y'all over
me.
north, y'all over south, where y'all at? You know what I'm saying? The same call. Like, I think I did check on you. I'm like, cause especially y'all, cause y'all was outside. So I was just making sure everybody was cool. But I just know that will be a moment that unfortunately you will always share with people. Like, where was you when this happened?
Yeah, when this happened, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, you talked about when you saw it, you didn't feel like nothing was going to change. So let me ask y'all, here we are, 5 years later. 5 years later. What's changed? And maybe for each of you, that's in context of what you wanted to change, right? You know, but so George Floyd, horrific, tragic murder, 5 years later. What's changed? Chef, what's changed?
I could honestly say like there's like a lot of more like mutual aid and like just like more community. I feel like people understand like the police is gonna always be there. They're gonna be a layer of quote unquote safety or whatever, you know, what have you. But at the end of the day, like George Floyd really let the community know like we have to hold each other accountable, and like we always hear like, you know, black on black crime or something like that and whatever. But we don't understand, like, we are the ones to, like, solve that problem, you know, within our community. And so, like, George Floyd was really just, like, I wouldn't say the foundation, but it really paved the way for, like, us to look at each other like Jordan said, like, because I can rewind a little bit when I seen the video, was the morning after. So the morning after it all, like pretty much the day after it happened, I woke up at like 5 a.m. I just so happened to, like, I don't know why, I just checked my Facebook messages, and like Dario said, like there was just like a video out there, and it wasn't really heavy in the views or whatever, but it had surfaced. So first thing I did, like you said, if you watched the video, like you felt like just like the pain of what George Floyd was going through, like, you know what I mean, like, and all of us knowing, like, you know, the interactions with police officers, knowing the hate that police officer Derek Chauvin had in his heart, like, just like whatever, and George Floyd just so happened to be the victim. And so just like, you know, peeling back the layers of that, it just made me go into activation mode. Like, me knowing who I am, me knowing the type of person I am, like, you know, young.
Unpack that a little bit for me. When
Yeah.
you said activation mode, what was happening? What did you start doing?
So just organizing, you know what I mean? Just me being a businessman, me being a chef, I just went right into like organized mode. So I made a group chat with a few of my peers that have different, we're all kind of known, but we all kind of like are known on different levels. So like Louis Blaze, he was like he was the Minneapolis he was the Minneapolis sector or whatever, you know what I mean? And then Elizer, he was political. He's Mankato State. He was the vice president of the council at Mankato State, Elizer Norris. And then Umpa Gorbanda, like, he went to Mankato State. So we had a lot of college network, and just that whole network. And then a few ladies, Essence Blakemore, she's heavy into activism and organizing with youth and things like that. Devin is a school educator. She's a school teacher. And Kajada, she's a farmer. So just all like different backgrounds of like our generation. We started up what was called like Project Restore Minnesota. at the earlier stages. So like we were very
I'm sorry, but what's interesting is like y'all didn't wait for the older generation. Y'all didn't wait for the Trues and Jameses of the world. I was gonna say Eli, but he don't think he quite there yet. y'all didn't wait for us to tell y'all what to do.
That was the beautiful thing about it though. Like we had our own, youth movement. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, that's what made our youth movement so strong. Is we had the Darios on speed dial, we had the James Burroughs, the Elis, the Jordans. You know what I mean? So as we were figuring out, what was the best idea and how we should move forward. You know what I mean? And looking back at the Huey Newtons and the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's, we wanted to move in a certain way that was like more of an underground movement. So we used Facebook and things like that, but we were the first person to use like WhatsApp and like Telegram and stuff like that, like stuff where like your ordinary people wouldn't tap into that, and we were like heavy, like the FBI could be tapping into us. Like this was like we were on that type of time, you know what I mean? Yeah, we were on that type of time, you know. So yeah, but we had the mutual aids going. So like you said, the initial question was what do you feel like has changed? And I just feel like us planting the seeds of like community and like us knowing that we could community, unity, unify, divided, we're not as strong, but, together, we're way stronger, so. Yeah, I couldn't get it out, but yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. Yes, sir. So, and then I lived off a university in Victoria at that time, during the George Floyd movement. So as soon as that stuff was happening off of university, like all I had to do was go outside a block away and there's university. And then like James Burroughs, rewind to Philasto Castile, that was my first apartment back when I was working at US Bank Stadium. My very first getting into my chef career was with Philando Castile, and I just remember like us trucking up. We lived a little bit ways down like Minnehaha, Pierce Butler, so we'd have to walk like pretty much like half a mile to university at that time. But we would join that march, Philando Castile, like right in the middle from it going from one end to the Capitol, and I just remember like so those are like the very first times where like I was like there could be change, and I feel like that's what changes like after these negative instances. You know what I mean? It shows that. It sucks, but it shows that, community is stronger together, and like we could really make change.
Like I shared a similar experience. Like one of my homies hit me up. I was part of a group chat. We got some stuff shaking, but I think it woke a lot of people up to be able to see what's possible.
So you think this was a change?
Yeah.
More people became woke.
Right.
I know that's a taboo term, right?
Yeah. But it's amazing what a few people can accomplish when you just put your heads together and get on the same accord and have the same mission in what you're trying to accomplish. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people for the first time got to witness that and be a part of that experience too, because I went out to some of the protests too. I was like seeing people that I didn't even think would show up for this.
Everybody was out there, I ain't gonna lie, for like a month straight.
And there was a whole element too that, in our community, there's been a lot of conversation around peaceful protests, armed resistance. How does that look? And what we ultimately began to see with this was a blending of the two out of necessity, because we started to see an intentional attack against black-owned infrastructure. It was really, even if it wasn't black-owned infrastructure, it was also infrastructure that was located within predominantly black communities, right? Things that really impact quality of life, right? Pharmacies, grocery stores, gas stations. Those were the three primary targets. So at a certain point, you saw that there was a level of coordination, right? And so
This was all very intentional.
you just begin to see the pieces kind of really falling together. And so what we also recognized was that MPD had dramatically pulled back. Dramatically.
Yeah, they did.
And they, at a certain point, they stopped responding to calls unless they was coming in force, right? And so if they weren't coming in force, they weren't responding. And so what I started to see was community began to galvanize itself and to protect and defend itself, right? I began to see, and I actually helped to coordinate a number of individuals who said, nah, y'all not finna burn this one down, or nah, take that over there with that. Because we started to see the level of coordination, right? We would see that accelerant would be delivered to a location, and then shortly after that, so then we started to say, okay, peep out for where the accelerant is, right? And we knew that a lot of this was people that didn't live, with us, that wasn't even from the state. It just became so clear, and they weren't going to be here afterwards, right? And so we said, hold up, time out. They ain't look like us at all. So we said, hold up, time out. We stood up. And let it be. And I've never seen the way that I saw the brothers and the sisters stand up in such a coordinated, concentrated, organized manner to say, y'all not finna turn us into no victims around here. Right. No, you're not firebombing our businesses, our homes. Just the way that I see, people started to take shifts, right?
Wow, that's right.
I mean, throughout the whole evening, the shifts will start at 8. And they would go all the way through. We work with the city. We got the support of James Burroughs and others to really help to make sure that those of us who are out there, we wasn't going to be bothered by the National Guard, right, who was coming through with tanks and everything else, and by MPD. They would be like, we're like, hold on, you see that? You read that? Go ahead and go on up out of here. We got this, right? Because somebody's got to hold it down, and y'all ain't doing it.
Generational and cross-disciplinary effort.
100%. And then the groups begin to communicate with each other.
With the young,
100%.
And then
Rival gangs.
Rival gangs, like people in healthcare, so people were coming from.
Oh yeah. I was getting group chats from all different types of some of the elders saying, okay, are y'all gonna protect this and this and this and this? And we was like, say less, we are. This group had that, this group had that. But what I saw at that time, it just blew me away. I was like, okay, if the stuff ever hit the fan, and I guess it did hit the fan, but if it really, really hit the fan, we will come together and we will be all right. We protect and we defend ours. That's what I saw. And it blew me away, the depth and the organization and the ferocity of the response that we gave. I mean, I was really impressed I'm still really impressed with that response.
Yeah, and I don't, my bad. I don't want to cut you off, but because I had a different perspective. So like, we had that, like, they're protecting and kind of like security, you know what I mean? And then like my role was like, as me being a chef and like my craft, we did mutual aid. So like during that time, like he was said, we definitely were working heavy with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, working heavy with the police departments, even though that was who the war, was against. But in order to get the families the proper necessities and stuff that they needed,
That's the stuff people don't know.
Yeah, like you had to balance it out, and that like Elizer, that collaboration was very beautiful, and that's what
we ain't had that energy happening.
yeah.
Energy wasn't happening.
But the young people did. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, that's Ramsey and St. Paul's. It was a different energy.
If you was the police in Minneapolis, you couldn't even come around unless you was 50 deep. Like you couldn't even. Yeah, it was like when the brothers talking about it, like I talk about a faith perspective of seeing the faith come together, but then also I got called home by my PO because I was still I had just like went through a whole little thing, and like I remember they were doing a thing where with probation, if y'all remember, you had a curfew. And if you wasn't at home, they was coming to get you. You were automatically in violation. So I remember all of those conversations, and this was the crazy part for me though. She was checking up on me even though I was like 30 days off probation. Wow. Yes. Yep.
Isn't that illegal?
And so basically, kind of like, I don't want to say threatening, but like my wife, like, man, you better come home. Like, hey, man. And I'm like, man, boo. So, you know, it's back and forth about that. But like, that's how, like, you could say, I'll call it fear. Like, that's how afraid they were to have people in the streets mobilizing and doing what they were doing. And not in a negative way, not in a harmful way, but saying things like, man, look, like, this is a sacred space. This is a sacred space. Like, no, like, you know, as much as you can, like, this is black owned. Like, I'm on Lake Street, and it's like, no, like, this is this, and this is that, and, you know, having those conversations. And the crazy thing is, when I say, like, they didn't look like us, I remember when the 3rd precinct burned down. We had actually had, so I'll give 2 things. A faith perspective, we had a prayer vigil out there. We had this meeting, a bunch of pastors, and they said, man, Jordan, what should we do? Because they were like, we've been seeing you're out there, like, what should we do? I said, man, y'all just come out here with me, let's just pray. So it was about 30 pastors, old, young, black, white, Hispanic, all that. Remember, we made the circle, and the circle was for young black men, or black men in general, come talk about what they've been through dealing with the police and just to have a voice. Sun starts to go down, and I ain't gonna say the brother who had the microphone unplugged it. He was like, gotta go, it's finna get crazy. Wow. So I'm out here with my wife, and I'm like, nah, when that sun, the energy is different. Like a sundown town, except it was the opposite. And you got like 20,000 people, but this is the crazy part though. And nobody talks about this. Black people tried to protect the 3rd precinct. I'm standing right there, and you seen, nobody talks about it. It was a group of anarchists that came up, all white. They had on these masks and all this crazy stuff. And I told my wife, I said, watch, they finna do something. One of them tried to throw a brick at the building. The rumor in the crowd was there's no police in the building. I saw the police leave. The rumor in the crowd was there's no police in the building, but they were in there. But they weren't showing themselves. So everybody in the crowd, like, ain't no police in the building, ain't no police in the building. Watch this. So the people who showed up to Antifa, they tried to throw a brick. It was a young black lady ran them. No. We here peacefully. We ain't here to destroy nothing.
And part of the reason why, I just want to enter, part of the reason why is because after they would do that, they would then run, but the officers would then shoot rubber bullets down,
and tear gas.
And tear gas down into the crowd. It's like, hold on, man. Nah, don't go throwing the rock and hiding your hand. You know
And we the one, we end up getting tear gas, hit with rubber bullets, all that, and then they show up with the mask on. So they ready for in my line, they ready for the tear gas. Yeah, they ready for all of it. Yeah, because they know. They got the Molotovs. Man, so when they set it off, right, and the black girl stopped them. So they just started going to individual people, waiting for somebody who they could get to incite them, right? They got one brother who threw a brick. Boom. 2-3 police hit the top of the building. They tell everybody bag up. People don't bag up. They still yelling. Now Antifa, whoever they is, they start throwing more bricks. So now what happens? The crowd sees the response, erupts. Here come bricks at the building. Next thing you know, here come tear gas. Here come rubber bullets. Here come all this crazy mess. You look in Target parking lot. You got people in here, they got the Molotov cocktails, they burning people's cars. It was chaos because there was no coordination. So you remember this thing. Remember in Target, they were burning people's cars who was there to protest. They weren't just like attacking the police.
They was just like,
you had people fighting them for, hey man, that's my car, don't burn my car. So it was just straight chaos, bro. That's what it was.
Too, of like how they operate, like they operate very like, when it's very erupt, like behind the scenes, like they got the super like spy type, like here where it's like, you know, they can just break like the glass, quick, you know, that glass, break that glass quick. Right.
But let me give you this one God moment, man. When we was praying, not to cut you off, but bro, it was like we had everybody expressing themselves. It was some people who came riding by in a car with a bullhorn. F that God stuff, God ain't real, F this, F that, just doing all sorts of cussing, telling everybody get away from them. They trying to, you know, be slaves and victims and all this. And I grabbed the mic and I'm like, no, man, like God is right here and God love you, you know, even through the hurt, even through the pain, we all are upset, but God love you. And nobody in the crowd of the conversation and the stuff in the prayer circle we were having left. And everybody just stayed. And people were able to pray and talk and have real conversation about what was happening in the city. And that was such a big God moment because you could sense people like something trying to draw them away to doing something negative. And they ended up staying. And who knows, man, that might have saved somebody's life. It might, you never know. But it's, yeah.
Let me ask y'all this. From a standpoint of what has changed, good or bad, right? Particularly as it relates to the narrative and the perception of us as black males, as black men, right? Because I think you'd be naive to think that what happened to George Floyd, that Chauvin didn't feel like he could be justified in his actions based on the narrative of the dangerous black man, right? So after that happened, man, it did spark a movement and a change. And, you know, kind of, Chef, you talk about a lot of people and organizations were awakened to a dynamic we had been trying to tell them was happening for generations, right? They finally said, oh wow, maybe what they were saying is real. This is really happening. And so many organizations were making these pledges and changing, and, you know, the implementation of diversity and inclusion officers. And I really felt like we were seeing and feeling some real change. That's really how I got to Minneapolis. It was through that moment, right? Timberwolves reached out and be like, bro, we could use what you offer. And like, but not just me, the chief diversity officers were popping up all over the place. Companies were pledging millions of dollars for social justice, right? And so Black Week last year, and it's a conference, a summit, a movement. Last year was the first one. And me and Phalonis Floyd were the opening speakers, George Floyd's brother. And the title of our session was called Broken Promises.
You about to get something started now, man, you know.
And I'll start with you, JB, because you are among the SMEs in diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And understanding these commitments that so many organizations here in the state of Minnesota and across the country, but definitely here, made. Do you think we've seen the change that's commensurate with the level of commitments that were made during that time?
No. So we have not.
Okay. Let me be clear. No.
But let me tell you why. So you go back 5 years, you see a black man murdered on the street by police. And I want you to think, you're in a corporation, you're a CEO, you're a vice president. What does that black man being murdered by the police have to do with employment of black people in your company, spending money with black businesses, or being in the community? How are they connected? I would say that the black man being murdered is about public safety, about how police handles community, about how we have alternatives to policing and public safety. None do corporations. Corporations were scared. They were like, man, this happened. The world is looking at us now. What can we do to appease a people? The James Burroughs opinion, Dr. Children's Minnesota opinion, James Burroughs opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody trying to appease. We made a statement right after. Myself, our CEO, and our CHRO, Lauren Kaplan. I made a statement helped the governor write a statement on Friday was murdered. And the statement was more about this moral injustice that we saw should not happen again. We have to change the systems by which to do that, and we got to be a part of that change. Next thing I know, 50 other CEOs signed on to that. Me too. You go on our website today, it's a list of 50 CEOs, didn't craft their own thing. They said, hey, we're going to do that same thing that y'all are doing. Well, we'd already started doing equity inclusion work at Children's. We'd already been doing it before I got there in 2019. We were doing it before. That work was not about a black man being murdered. Right. That work was about creating access and opportunity for a community. Now, if that's the catalyst for why you're hiring a chief diversity officer at other corporations, you haven't set the groundwork to change the culture for that person. You've thrown a person in there. 76% of them are white women. You've thrown a person in there. Yeah. That's how 76% of the supervisors are white women. You throw them in there and say, hey, make a change. you don't know what the change is about, you don't know what the culture is about, you don't know why things aren't working to begin with, but you said make a change. That was the fault of those corporations. And we all used to talk, on the side of like, okay, how long is this momentum gonna last?
Yeah.
So people are excited about it for the first 2 years, but once they see the results maybe aren't what they need to get, and they haven't trained the people properly to bring in there, a lot of times they put a brother or sister in there who didn't know diversity and inclusion, who just happened to be the top level black person in the company, put him in there. And if you're not about the business of it, if I wasn't about the business of knowing how to work in community and work in government and work in corporations, I wouldn't be on the phone calling and talking to Eli or Lakeem and others when they own the freeway.
Right.
Y'all got about an hour on the freeway, get off the freeway, state troopers are coming, move it over here and do this. All the time. Talking to them beforehand. Y'all gonna meet with the governor, I set it up. Push these buttons for me, and then when the governor gets to hear that stuff, you're like, James, what do we do? I got you, governor. We're doing it together. It's an inside and outside.
Hold on,
Bro.
We gotta cut that part.
Bro, but that was the Malcolm. I don't think people understand this. That was the Malcolm Martin dynamic.
Yeah.
Right? Malcolm was the activist.
Yeah.
Right? Martin, in my opinion, Martin was the advocate. Right? And Malcolm, as the activist, he out there stirring stuff up. He making things real uncomfortable. Right? Now, once the powers that be are uncomfortable, because they ain't inviting Malcolm into their boardroom. Right? They ain't inviting Malcolm into the White House. Right? but they need somebody that they can talk. So Martin was the advocate. Right? And that's why I say, it's not either or, it's both and. Like, we needed both of those approaches.
You did. But you also needed an understanding of folks who are doing the protests about what do we want?
Right.
What are we protesting for?
Right.
So at the end of the day, we said, what's the 10 things we want? A lot of people didn't know. They were just angry at a certain point.
Right.
And I said, okay, we're angry, and you got to get through that. You got to, don't ignore that trauma. Get through it and fight through it. At the end of the day, what do we want? We want more access to resources. We want grocery stores in our neighborhood. We want our neighborhoods to look like Edina. I should have to go 5 miles out my way to get some gas, get some good quality food, and have a good, safe environment. Those are the things we want. So I don't think we're there yet. But I do think it's an
But those are the changes you still would like to see.
Well, I like to see them, but also too, now's a pivotal moment as we sit here in 2025. People are willing to take diversity, equity, inclusion, put it in a word called DEI, and bastardize what it is, make it seem illegal, and now nobody wants to run towards it. People run away from it.
But it feels like we want, if just from that example, like the grocery stores and what we want, it feels like we're going away from it. You go over north, take Cub Foods out of North Minneapolis, no grocery stores. For miles.
Yeah, you take that cup for,
Walmart's gone from Brooklyn Center. Target left Brooklyn Center. Like, I remember we stayed over north and Walmart was across the bridge in Brooklyn Center, and you could hear when they was, raiding the Walmart. Like, it's gone. Target's gone. Like, when you think about it, a lot of people who live north, they got to go to Maple Grove Walmart to go shopping now. I got a lady from the church. She was like, Pastor, it's no problem. I'm going to go out to Sam's Club. And I'm like, Sam's Club? She's like, yeah, I got to go grocery shopping. She stayed north side.
Wow.
But she got to go grocery shopping at Sam's Club because I can't afford, like, I ain't going to say, it's hard to afford the local grocery store like North Market. No knock on them, and then they don't have all the supplies and everything you need. So it feels like we moved forward for a couple years, but then people slowly started pulling back. And they slowly, like I like to say, white people ain't sad anymore. And they're not feeling like, oh my God.
They're not feeling that,
They're not feeling like, even in the church, there was all of these white people stepping forward, like, we had a white lady who I was in Costco, so we had a free store for 6 weeks from May 27th to our first church service July 12th, across street from the 3rd precinct. And we met a white lady in Costco who seen us with all this stuff, because I'm just blasting my credit card, and then we finna get some stuff and bring it out here. We were already doing street outreach, so we had a team, everything. And the lady was like, what are you guys doing with that? So one of my guys who work with me, he's like, oh, they just started church. This is what they're doing. They got this free thing. This lady, next thing I know, her church family, friends, other churches, they just start dropping off all this stuff. I'm talking about randomly, just pulling up on the corner here. They rarely stay to serve, but they come in,
Right.
they drop this stuff off.
Man, I love what I'm hearing, right? I listened to you brothers talk, man, and you know, JB talked about the assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would contend that there has historically been an assault on the black male identity, right? Right? Not just diversity, equity, and inclusion that's recent, but I would think I believe historically there's been an attack and an assault on who we are and what we represent. But I listen to each of you brothers around the table, man. Y'all out here putting in the work, making a social impact, a community impact, a cultural impact, an economic impact, right? For the least of us, the most vulnerable of us. And those narratives aren't being told, those stories aren't being told. So in addition to it being an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, do you brothers believe, and again, that was my take, do you believe there is a consistent attack on the black male identity?
I think, well, one, absolutely, one, but I think it's even deeper than that. You know, one of the things that I talked to you about in the book that I read is that I'm gonna sanitize the language a little bit, but basically it says that a black man must be killable before he's killed, right? And to
That's a
further
bar, bro.
expound upon that, it said,
That's crazy.
character assassination always precedes the physical assassination, right? Always, right? And so you have to make a person hated, right? So that that hate can then necessitate their elimination. And the elimination
that's
of the
deep.
hated person doesn't cause as much of a stir because we hate this person, right? You know, and so that's what they mean by
Make them killable.
person must be killable before they are killed, right? So you will get a Derek Chauvin, right, with the auspices of, you know, the lowly black man, the don't take care of their children, don't marry, you know, sisters when we make six figures. All of this is untrue. When brothers that make six figures or more definitely marry sisters at extremely high rates, right? We're talking extremely high rates. You know, there's been study after study after study that's been done. Black men, I mean, I'm at the table right now with some, literally, this is the all-star of black dads that you got on the panel. You know what I mean? Like, seriously.
Black uncles too.
Right.
But specifically the dads, like all three of these brothers, I have had an opportunity. But these three are the ones that I've witnessed over years, right, with their children. It's been very clear and loud, right? And I was like, dang, one of these days, I'm gonna be a black dad too, like these brothers, right? They're very loud with their love. And to me, it only undergirds the studies that's been done by the National Institute of Health, by the CDC, and other entities that basically say black fathers are the best, right? Despite all of the lies, the misconceptions, all of that kind of stuff, that is really generated to reduce the value and to make a black man kill. So you
Make 'em killable. Wow.
Leaning on that black man's neck for as long as he did, suffocating the air out of this man until he died, right? You will get it, and he doesn't see a human under his knee, he sees a thing, right? You know what I mean? And so in the media and in other spaces, we have been thingified, and so that's why they're so quick to, get ready. That's why he was experiencing what he was a thing, he was a threat. They didn't know who you were, but he was a thing, and he was a threat, right? And so we have a responsibility to push back. It's literally life-saving. When we push back against these false narratives and humanize ourselves, we literally are saving other black men's lives. I say it's not true at all. It's not factual. It's not statistically accurate. It's completely untrue. You're trying to dehumanize us, and I see what you're on. So when we push back on these narratives, we literally have the power to save lives. That's why you was about to jump in.
I just
what I realized was the camera came on and people had the power to record the narrative, right? And independent journalists popped up, people that were telling the story for real on the ground, and all you need to do was have a camera in your hand, and the camera became one of the most useful weapons that we had to tell the story, because it's before then it was like, the news is saying it's a medical emergency and he died from drug use. And
Right.
we were
It
able
wasn't captured.
yeah.
Yeah.
If it wasn't captured, and
Right.
we weren't able to be like, this
It
is
doesn't
what's
spark the change in the conversation that it sparks.
think about the highway.
100%.
Think about the highway, right? Like how we were on the highway. I'd say we, because I was not
94?
there. 94, when the truck came through and tried to hit
Oh,
us.
yeah.
Right?
No, that was 35.
Don't incriminate myself. All prosecution. I was not there. I was not there. I wasn't. I honestly wasn't though.
That was 35, bro.
Right. But you could see literally, and I'm being honest because I had kids, so I have some guilt around this. I gotta be honest with you, because I remember I watched everything from my phone. I took care of my family. I went to the store. It was only like one pack of 9mm bullets left at Farm and Fleet. That's how it really got, right? Like, so I mean, like, I was like, I gotta protect my family. Everybody come to my house, I'm gonna protect y'all, right? And I watched people like Eli, people like Cherokee out there on the highway, out there filming everything happening and showing us being positive black male leaders.
Well, let me
You see what I'm saying?
No, that's dope. Let me do, because we wrapping up. So with that being said, and I love what you just said, Eli, man, about the intentional attack and the assassination on the black man's identity and character, making us killable before we can be killed. That's something that we all need to be cognizant of and aware of, so that we don't succumb to the trick of the enemy and allow ourselves to be baited into that behavior, right? And I think that's really powerful, man, and I don't want that point to be missed.
And true to add that before you go to your last point, don't then allow ourselves as black men to be the killers of the black man that's not killable. So you are not doing the work
Right.
of someone else because you believe the narrative, the false narrative has been put out there. And that's happening much too often as well.
Yeah.
Not enough of us sitting down and talking, getting to know each other. It's more so, I heard of that pastor over there, South, but you know, that's a light-skinned brother. I don't know if he's really down for the cause. That's what I would say. We're going to make up stories about
Right.
James thinks he's all that. He got all these titles and stuff. He thinks he's that. Before you get to know me as a person. So don't take that killable piece and start doing it yourself, because then we're killing off each other.
Can I just pose a question real quick? And I know we got to wrap up, but me and Dario talked about this, 5, 6, 7 years ago, excuse me. Remember when we talked about how we said with the organizations we run, we don't want to keep telling these stories of poor black kid, no father in home, blah, blah, blah. We want to tell the stories of this kid is resilient. Like, this kid is smart. They have straight A's. Like, that's why you should get behind and support this kid, right? So, like, what narrative do we tell? Because in the world that I'm in, the nonprofit world, even funders and foundation donors and everybody, they want to hear the negative narrative. Oh, the black man isn't raising his kids. But you're right. Statistics say black men are better fathers in and out of the home than anybody else. Statistics say that black men take care of their kids even if they're not in the home with them more than any other race.
Right.
Like, there's so much data out there, but what people only want to hear is the negativity around black men and around how they are and who they are. So to me, hearing that, I never heard that before, bro. So like, that was so profound to me, because it's like continuously having to push that narrative for certain reasons continuously gives people the reason to say he's still killable. You know?
So Jay, how do we now, and this, I want to go around, I want to hear this from everyone. How do we, or you, what's an action step I don't want anybody to project on what other people should do, right? What's an action step you believe you can or are doing or will do to help change that narrative? Just what is Jordan going to do to help change that narrative?
I can tell you right now, this brother brought our conversation back up that I forgot about. And like, we're going to start presenting things in a positive light. You know, like, no more, oh, you have 1 in 3 black men are ended in jail. Yeah, that's important, but you know what? No, what's the flip side? We got a 100% rate of no recidivism. So I'm not going to tell you about 1 in 3 black men in jail. I'm going to tell you the people who come to our program, nobody's coming back to you. And that's why you should invest in us. So I'm changing the narrative from the negative data, I'll say, the statistics, to So what's the positive for us?
Right, accentuate the positives.
They
Yeah.
call that asset framing in development and DevOps. It's just a way that you present the story. You can present it from a deficit perspective, or you can present it from an asset perspective, and then forcing the funders to begin changing their behaviors by how we are framing up what is happening within the community, assets versus
You
deficits.
should have took me a hard one with you.
So I know that man talk about asset framing. He talk about alternate interior angles and the reciprocation of the equilibrium.
Here's the thing, right? I needed to see all the images, you know, especially of you. I needed to see that stuff because men were attracted by what we see, and so like to see the type of fathers that y'all were, man, that really. I made a post. I tagged all of y'all in a post.
I remember that.
Right?
I remember that.
This is before I was a father because it really impacted. Well, I didn't grow up with a father, and so it really impacted me to see the quality. And so yeah, you're right. Just in terms of like getting that, because for people like me, like I need to see that. It inspires me.
Yeah. What are you doing, Eli, to help change this narrative? And I know you're doing a lot, but just for the sake of this conversation, just one action step. Because for others that may hear this conversation, I want them to have some takeaways and be inspired, just like you talked about, you were inspired. I want others that may hear this conversation to be inspired by action steps that all you brothers are taking. What's one thing?
One thing that I am committed to building a phenomenal home for my wife and my daughter to thrive in.
That's
one that my daughter won't have to heal from. She don't know what it means to be yelled at or cursed at or hit on. None of that kind of stuff. And so that's my commitment, is to just continue to build a beautiful, black, loving home, loving marriage, and being a great dad. That's my contribution to society.
No, I love it. I love it. Kasey, one action step.
Man, you kind of took mine, but you got a whole family. I only have nieces and nephews, so I'm not going to use that one. But I do echo that same sentiment, because I see how like none of my aunts and uncles really did much for me. I mean, they always showed up on like my birthday or holidays or whatever, but no one took time outside of that to invest into me, you know? So I look at that as like, okay, I see where I had a deficit in some way. How can I be an asset to my nieces and nephews? But the one thing I'll say that I feel like I'm doing is changing that narrative just like in my circle, my network, immediate network. I remember one time I got robbed a while back, and one of my friends was like, where do they live? You know, like, we want to retaliate, basically. And so I just squashed the whole thing. I was like, this isn't worth it. It's not worth my time. It's not worth your time, you know? So changing that narrative when like certain situations come up where I know people are gonna go left, I'm trying to make people either stay straight on that straight and narrow path, or just completely like erase that idea from their mind entirely. So
I love that, because it goes back to what Jordan was saying based on what Eli said, not allowing yourself to be conditioned to abandon the humanity that you see in another black man and make him easily killable. Yeah, that's dope. Chef, one action step from you to change the narrative.
Just trying to keep pushing my agenda, and my bad. Staying deep in the community, and so we just did this cooking competition with Louis Blaze and some youth, and just trying to be the mentor to other young people, like pretty much like getting out of high school, like Dario was to me, and just pretty much just keep working on my businesses and stuff, and hopefully some things get off the ground so I can start hiring young folks and putting them in position to steer them away from things that might not look like the end of the light at the tunnel. You know what I mean? Some things look, kind of daunting when you're just out there alone. So just try to build myself and be that big, powerful person so I can continue to help out others.
Man, do not underestimate the power of your presence, man. Like seriously, showing up I've learned over the years that just showing up, I'm not contributing any money to this thing. I'm not actively serving or physically doing anything when people are having programs or events, and I realize, man, how much it means to them just to show up.
That's powerful.
Do not underestimate the power of your presence, and just when people are doing something and you just show up, man, that feeds them.
You just see the light and like people.
Yeah, that feeds their soul.
Okay, fine, but I'll start showing up.
It's hard though when you're a parent. You only got so much time.
I've been told by our camera crew we got 3 minutes for the cameras cut. So
Okay.
battery life.
Nope.
So I'll make it quick, and this is what I was gonna say anyways. But just start to tell brothers I love them. I mean, I don't think we understand the power of just saying that. Like, and it's funny because you got to break brothers down sometimes. Be like, man, I love you. Yeah, love, bro, love. He's like, yeah, no, I love you, bro. Like, it's different too, bro. Me too. Like, no, say it. You know what I'm saying? Because I think when they say it, then it's like when you go to make a decision or an action in your life, you're gonna think twice. Man, somebody love you. You know what I'm saying? And I think when you say that, it means.
So 3 things. 1, keep your house in order. So raise my 13-year-old daughter like the beautiful princess, goddess, queen she is and will be. Continue to do that and show examples for other brothers like you as well. Make sure that I also pass the torch before it's gone. So I don't plan on leaving this earth anytime soon, God willing, but I'm not going to wait until I'm not no longer the person out here being sought after before I pass the torch to these other young brothers. So me and Marcus Flynn started something about getting young brothers together with older brothers, sharing that knowledge. Because if I don't share that knowledge, my time on earth would have been wasted, because I haven't given that back to other brothers. And the last thing is to keep centered on the next generation. Making sure that you realize I'm not fighting for me anymore. I'm fighting for that next generation so they can go to Morehouse, they can go to Georgetown, they can be in the C-suite for the first time of the organization, and it won't be the last time. And making sure that they also know how to grind too.
Yeah.
I can always go back to the grind, and I can go to the neighborhood and talk to people because I've been there.
Right.
I've been talking to these fellas for a long time. I ain't never been on no C-suite hierarchy, making sure that I can show other C-suite leaders don't operate like that. Come back and talk to these brothers. They need us. We need them. We need to learn from them as well.
Brothers, thank you, and I mean that with all sincerity. And I'll just close with this, and inspired by my brother Kasey down here, is do not grow weary of doing good work. Because you will, not you might, not as a possibility, you will reap a harvest in due season if you do not give up. Thank you, brothers. Appreciate y'all.